In Money Watch, the spread of the Delta.
Hello, today I present to you an extremely attractive application for music lovers. It's completely free. You can listen to music online or download unlimited music to use whenever you don't have internet. The powerful search function helps you find anything you want. Trust me. It's hard not to find what you're looking for because the search function is really powerful. Application download link is attached in the description of the video. I'm pretty sure you'll like it. Thanks.
The coronavirus variant means many companies and employees are uncertain how work life will be impacted in the fall. But most employers aren't giving up on offices just yet. According to surveys by the Morning Consult, only 8% of respondents say their companies have created a permanent work from home policy. Most respondents say they are still working in person. For more on this, let's bring in Keith Ferrazzi. He's the founder and chairman of Ferrazzi Greenlight, a global consulting and coaching firm based in Los Angeles. Thanks for being with us. So some CEOs and managers believe that their employees won't be as productive when they're working from home compared to when they're in the office. Look, just speaking for the broadcast business, I mean, we've been putting on broadcasts from home for the last 18 months. And I got to tell you, it feels like we're as busy as we ever were pre-pandemic. So do you agree with that assessment?
I'll tell you that wrong-headedness ship has already sailed. There is no way that anybody can truly state with any evidence that people are less productive working from home. In fact, what we saw over the last year is an incredible amount of productivity by the reduction of the commute time, et cetera, and all of those distractions. So what we found was absolutely the opposite of what everybody feared at the beginning. Productivity has increased, actually. Not only that, but inclusion has increased. In other words, we can now have an equal voice from people all over the world at the same time in meetings. Creativity goes up and innovation goes up, despite the fact that so many managers think the opposite.
So that's really interesting. Because my question was going to be, what are the benefits when it comes to either hybrid or full-time remote work? What are the benefits for the employer and the employee? But I guess if the employee is benefiting, in many ways, the employer benefits as well.
Well, I think what you're asking is there a disproportionate benefit to the employee who's able to be at home, who's able to take a 5-minute break and go check out their children, who's able to not have that commute time, et cetera? Now, all of that is absolutely true. But let's talk about the employer. The employer actually benefits in a number of ways. The employer benefits by having the ability to include all of the voices in a very equal way. So in the olden days, first of all, we've been having remote work for a very long time. We all work in global organizations or in multinational organizations where individuals happen to be on the phone because they're in Chicago and we're having the meeting in New York City. This has been happening for a long time. It's just been happening poorly. Today, we're an equal group with an equal voice. Now, I have to say that one of the big challenges that managers have had is they actually weren't great managers in the past. Teams weren't effectively managed that well. And when you take the lazy practices of a lot of organizations of the past and port them into a remote world, you do see a degradation of those teams. For instance, when a manager says, and this thing just drives me crazy, when a manager says, how will I know whether my employees are actually getting their work done? Well, what in the world have you done as a manager to negotiate reasonable goals on a week-to-week basis with your employees? That was your job. Right. And if you're not doing that, if you don't understand what the expectations of an employee are, then you're actually at fault, not the employee. One of the best practices we're actually suggesting for employees that are working remotely is that they actually clearly negotiate what they're working on. They communicate clearly the goals that they're working on for the week, and then they state at the end of the week what they've done, where they're struggling, and where they're going the next step forward. There's been a lot of poor, lazy management and leadership that we actually need to take control of in this remote and hybrid world, and I guarantee it'll be better if we do.
Yeah, I think, Keith, one of the things that we've been talking about is that you mentioned the ship sailing for managers and company and corporate, headquarters that would think that people were not really working as hard if they were working from home. But I also think that the idea of getting back to where we were, 18 months ago, that ship has sailed as well. I think a lot of employees, no matter where you fall on the hierarchy of an organization, are asking their managers to take into account what we've been able to accomplish over the last 18 months, and they're going to have to grapple with that. So as these companies transition to these long-term hybrid work models, what do you think that they should take into account as bosses start to put together a plan for the hybrid model? There have to be, of course, some pitfalls.
Well, the first thing that I want to state is that in the peak of the pandemic, we started the research that we've been doing and doubled down in earnest. We've been working since 2012 on understanding remote and virtual teams, published dozens and dozens of studies, and nobody gave a damn. Now you wake up at the peak of the pandemic and everybody cares and everybody's leaning into it. My greatest fear, I'll be honest, is actually happening. So many organizations, my fear was they were not going to use this great inflection point of the reboot of the way we work. And they were going to crawl back into old work ways after all this was done and go, phew, it's over. The reality is we need to use this time to go forward to work, not just back to work. And we actually started a massive research study. How do you go forward to work? And we're publishing a book on that subject at the end of the year. The most important thing is start to wipe the slate clean. Ask yourself, how should we be working in a go forward world? Don't utilize the old work rules. So I'll give you a number of, for instances. We need to make sure that we are negotiating clear objectives with our associates, and we work in what's called an agile fashion. Every week, in fact, we did this throughout the entire pandemic. We worked in crisis agile. Every week we woke up and said, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What's going on in the world, et cetera. We need to chill out now and do that in a very deliberate way, negotiating specific goals on a weekly basis. The second thing we need to focus on is making sure that the affinity of our associates, the closeness, the connectedness, everybody says, well, we need to go back into the work so that we have a better culture. We need to go back into work so that we can bond together as a team. No, you don't. You just need to make that more purposeful. You as a manager need to spend more one-on-one time with each associate, understand what's going on in their lives. A very simple practice that I recommend is in the middle of a meeting that you might be having, ask everybody, hey, why don't you put into chat a very simple number from 0 to 5. What's your energy level these days and how you doing? And everybody puts there. And if it's a 2 or below, you pause and you say, Jane, is everything okay? What can we do? Right? That's the kind of thing that wasn't even happening in the old work world where everybody was leaning on small talk and schmoozing. But the reality is if we go deep purposefully, we're actually going to be able to have a better culture, a better connectedness in a remote world than we did before when everything was reliant on a walk-in from the car park or a talk in the coffee room. So the key about being remote is being purposeful and dialing up and engineering the way we should have been working all along, but we did it in serendipitous moments as opposed to purposeful moments. We've been studying all of these and we've been documenting them for free for the world, and it's at a place called virtualteamswin.com. And hopefully these practices will not only help us live in a hybrid world, they'll help us be better than we ever were, more agile, more resilient, more connected, because we're purposeful.
Do you foresee it? So say we move forward with this and you know, everyone follows the advice that you're giving. Do you foresee sort of the rise of a different type of worker? As you're talking, and I'll try to make this story really short, I'm recalling early in the pandemic, a parent friend of mine talking about her 2 children, and the child that was super social, grades were plummeting once they went remote, and the more reserved child, grades were going up. Part of that had to do with the fact that the more social child did not have the ability to sort of schmooze with his professors. They're both college kids, you know, kind of like you know, hand in something a little bit late, but kind of crack a few jokes. Like he wasn't able to do that, and that had a direct impact on his grades. And so it occurred to me at the time, oh, this is an environment for a different type of student. Do you foresee like an environment for a different type of worker that maybe did not excel as much before, was being overlooked before, could excel?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think let's split that into 2 different conversations. One of them is, I definitely think we're going to see a certain type of worker be more successful in this new world. The worker who's self-driven, self-motivated, clearly an individual who can negotiate and keep their goals at their own forefront, individuals who are more proactive, et cetera. This individual will thrive during this transformation. But for the others, the question is, what's the role of the manager to make sure that they take the things that used to happen, like that student just serendipitously walking in and having that little tiny chat? How does the manager, how does the teacher, how do those of us in authority make room for that and space for that in this medium? Look, this is just a medium. Similar to the physical medium, this is just a medium. And if we use it for a different thing, it can benefit us. So a teacher, for instance, or actually I can just speak of this because we coach teams to thrive in this transformation. We have entire meetings now designated where teams just do bonding. It's a half of an hour and everybody goes around and just checks in. What's going on sweet in your life right now and what's going on sour? Something as simple as that would have been done accidentally or serendipitously in the walk down a hallway, but now has to be actually created a meeting, right? So if you follow these rules, we'll be able to replace the things that happened in serendipity that made work in a physical world that now you need to port into a virtual world in a new medium, right? So I do believe that we're going to have to do both. But I would say that there's a third option, which is that we're going to have to teach all associates. If you aren't that naturally driven, naturally gregarious, natural outreach, proactive person, then you're going to have to start learning these new skills. You know, a lot of the managers aren't negotiating goals in advance on a weekly basis, and they're just sitting back saying, I'm wondering if my employees are effective or productive. That's a case where you as the associate, you as the employee need to take control of your brand, take control in a world where you don't have a walk down the hallway conversation with your boss to say how you're doing or what you're keeping up on. Instead, you need to send the message out in advance and say, hey, here's what I'm working on. Here's what success looks like for the week. And then at the end of the week saying, here's some of the things that I'm struggling about. I'd love a one-on-one conversation, maybe a little coaching call. And by the way, here's what I'm going to work on next week. And by the way, why don't you celebrate your wins? Here's the things I'm so proud of what I did for this past week. A simple owning of the communication as an associate who's remote, managing your boss that way will make all the difference day and night. Now, it's probably tough for a kid who's a little kid in school, but that's where I think we as people in authority need to start rebooting the work world for this new medium. And we'll have more inclusive voices. We'll have one of the things that I've seen is we've been able to have organizations get so much more input, so much more creativity, so many more ideas. Business planning used to be reserved to 15 executive team members. Now we're working with organizations to get the top 300 leaders involved in business planning for the future of the coming year, growth planning, risk mitigation. We're able to have hundreds of people go into a Zoom call, go into breakout rooms, open a Google Doc, and start answering the question, what are the greatest risks we see in the coming 6 months to our business? We never had that kind of ubiquity, that kind of open-ended conversation with the entire organization that we can have today.
I tell you, Keith, you can tell that you are really excited about this brave new work world, if you will. It's sort of contagious. Keith, Ferrazzi, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Virtualteamswin.com would be a great place to learn new tools. Thanks.